this is what we wanted. This is what we certainly didn't think we were going to get, but like, wow, this is awesome. I just really hate that we had to or have to keep talking about my team and their shortcomings. Like, that's getting annoying to me.
Yeah.
Not to be.
I thought after last week, Lando's sailing away with a 22-second victory.
Nope.
I'm like, here we go. Okay, I finally don't have to worry about McLaren anymore.
What did I say last week, Sean? Show me that you can do it again throughout a whole weekend. Oh, yikes.
No, Katie, I want you to stop being mean to me.
Okay, I'm going to mute my mic for the rest of the podcast. I'm just going to be nice.
And speaking of getting the party started.
For the victory lap, though. They ain't never seen nothing like this before. Lit the room when I came through the front door. Ask me if I stress overcome, what for? Train in the trees, please pardon my sycamore. Touch burning sands, cross lands, and stormy shore seasons in the year, yeah. Switch gears, with keeping haters in the rear. At the blood, sweat, and tears, and my goal so near. I see my victory so clear. I see my victory so clear. And today, we break through. 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 And today, we break through.
What's up, everybody? It is time for the only podcast in the world. We haven't double-checked that, but I'm trusting that it's true. Covering specifically Formula One and football. It is everybody's favorite auto/football podcast, the Gridiron Podcast, and we're only 10 seconds into this sucker and already off the rails. That's a new record, I think. I'm Sean Barie. Joining me as always, if you're watching on Twitch, Twitter, or YouTube, up in the left-hand corner, we got Nick Shook holding down the fort in DeLand. Yeah, got to get a flex in there. And then we've got our Canadian queen up in the right-hand corner, Katie Caldwell, holding it down in British Columbia. What makes that part of Britain so Colombian, Katie? I've always been curious.
That's a great question. I'll let you know by next week.
Very different directions. Seems like a very confused province.
Yeah, I'll get back to you.
I
don't have one answer.
So far off the rails on that one. You never know what you're going to get here. It is episode 46 of the Gridiron Podcast. We've got a lot to get into tonight, including, guys, our very last and final, but certainly not least, NFL division preview. We are tackling the NFC West this week, just a couple of days before kickoff in the NFL on Thursday night between the Ravens and the Chiefs. It's officially week one, so we got to get this NFC West, or AFC West, division preview wrapped up. But first, we do have some F1 stuff to talk about. Actually, a lot of F1 stuff to talk about because we had a race.
Hi, Sean. What happened?
We're going to talk about it. I almost said I don't want to talk about it, but we're going to talk about it here. F1 was at the Temple of Speed this past weekend. Monza for the Italian Grand Prix. What is it? The Pirelli del Primo Italiano Grand Primo. I don't know. The Italian Grand Prix always have the longest names, but this is the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, like we said. And it was, chock full of, I don't know what it was chock full of, but it was chock full of it for sure.
I mean, that's one way to describe your team. I mean, chock full of indecisions, chock full of lack of direction and team orders. We can go in a number of different directions here, but
it was chock full of a lot of things. And to just give you a quick recap, Charles Leclerc from Ferrari finished P1, much to the elation of the Tifosi that got to sing out the bop that is the Italian national anthem, and then finishing right behind. What?
Isn't it? It's like my favorite national anthem.
It is. Absolutely. I mean, as a red-blooded American, it is really hard to put any national anthem of our own, but man, the Italian national anthem, it's one of those things that like you can just scream out to, like you can just, you know what I mean? Just shout it and you can dance to it. Like it is awesome.
When watching all of the Ferrari folks in the crowd, like screaming at the top of their lungs, like obviously there's no better place for this to have all happened. It was wonderful. But if that came on in a bar, I would be hyped.
Like, I don't even know what the words are. And to be honest with you, I don't want to know what they are because there's just this mystery surrounding the Italian national anthem that we get to hear every couple of months now in F1. And it's, I don't want it to lose that mystique.
Sean, Sean, how are you feeling as a McLaren fan today? Do you want to just kind of walk through your feelings and intertwine it with what happened? Because you're the one that we really need to hear from this episode, as these McLaren issues seem to be a bit of a pattern.
Just a bit. And who said therapy wasn't free when you can get on the Gridiron podcast? Yeah, Charles Leclerc finishing P1 for Ferrari, then finishing P2 and 3 behind him were the likes of Oscar Piastri and then Lando Norris in P3 to finish off the podium. What's interesting about that is you have to understand that the starting grid was the reverse of that order. It was Lando Norris starting on pole. Right next to him on the grid was his teammate Oscar Piastri, and then right behind those two, Charles Leclerc. And hey, you know what? During qualifying, that Ferrari showed a lot of pace, which you kind of figured it would because this is their home race, right? There's also the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, but Monza is Ferrari's home race. Like, this is the one they really want to win. And it's had pace all year long, and you kind of figured, all right, they're going to really, show out. They're bringing all these upgrades for Monza specifically. And you can say they worked, but I don't even think Ferrari thought they would be standing on the top step of the podium when the day ended because of that starting order. A McLaren 1-2 lockout. And going into the race, you had to think, okay, Lando Norris isn't within striking distance yet of Max Verstappen, but he is closing the gap in that World Drivers' Championship race. Max is starting back in P7. That Red Bull is starting to look more and more tractorish, John Deere-ish every day, every week. So you got to think, all right, McLaren need to protect the 1-2, get Lando on the top step. And I mean, hey, now we're looking at like, a 40-point, or not a 40-point gap, but like a 55 to 60-point gap in the Drivers' Championship versus a 70-point gap. Like, this is going to be huge. Nope, not at all. Oscar passes Lando on lap 1, which then opened the door for Charles. He goes past Lando, who goes from P1 to P3 in the blink of an eye. And then you have this kind of vicious cycle that just kind of ruined McLaren's day. And you can think, hey, second, third place, that's not too bad. It is when you were expecting a 1-2 and you're supposedly lead driver to, take a major step forward in the Drivers' Championship standing. So in my mind, and I'm sorry, I'm rambling now, but in my mind, Oscar passing Lando on lap 1. Love that they were free to race. Wish that they were free to race later on. Because Oscar passing Lando on
Do you?
Yeah, I don't know. If
as a McLaren fan, I wouldn't want them racing. I'd want a clear 1-2, even though their new talking point seems to be 2 number 1 drivers.
Look, there's still this is still a sport. You still have to let them race at some point, right? Like, team orders can come and they can go, but I'm fine if they wanted to race just later on down the road after you had that 1-2 locked up. After that, hey, if Lando loses to Oscar, Lando loses to Oscar. It is what it is. But on lap 1, that opened the door for Charles, passes Lando. Then you had this vicious cycle of Oscar, who is not good at using his tires anyway, used them up too quickly because Charles was chasing him. Lando was chasing Charles. And we saw that the McLaren's tire dag was just a little off this week. I mean, most teams did a 2-stop race. The only one that didn't was Ferrari. And at some point, McLaren and Lando even went for the undercut on Charles, and it worked. But they were expecting Ferrari to do a 2-stop race. And you heard how mad Charles was at his team. Why did you let them do the undercut on me? Because Ferrari knew, or at least hoped, and were banking on a 1-stop race, and they delivered.
They don't deliver, though, if Charles doesn't actually properly manage those tires and never really push the car too much. He kind of just, like laid back and just waited, like a shark circling in the water. There's the McLarens up there. They're battling each other. I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait. Because guess what? I'm not coming in for a second pit stop. You think I am? I'm ready to ride these babies to the end because I know that that's going to be the difference. What was interesting is that at the end of the race, they discussed where if McLaren had pit in a different order, that the difference would have been so close that it could have been Lando overtaking Charles like near the end of the race for the win. And instead it was like 3 seconds, and there he is up in front, elated to win this race, which speaks to, I think, the greater concern, Sean. They obviously they were racing, they were battling and kind of burning each other's tires out. But like, again, we talked about this before, is McLaren the team that still doesn't know how to operate like a championship contending team? Because if they're really focused on that, because that is very much within reach right now. Like this is something that I never thought we would say, but it's very much within reach. If they were going to actually, if that was their intention, was to compete for a championship, then they wouldn't have let this race unfold the way it did. Credit to Oscar. That move on the opening lap was beautiful. Maybe the move
so
of the
nice.
year.
Yeah.
The way he was able to actually make it stick and keep it on the track and everything else was fantastic. Great feather in the cap for Oscar as he continues to build his racecraft. But allowing that type of stuff to happen over the course of a race cost them a win. It cost them many points.
No, you're not wrong at all. I think I was very clear when I said that. Like, I'm not blaming Oscar. Heck, you know what? I am blaming Oscar. I don't think McLaren thought that was going to be the scenario. Hear me out. After lap 1, hey, if Oscar passes Lando, fine. We're still fighting for a 1-2 finish, and we can lock that up pretty easily. But that pass opened the door for Charles. And I don't think, of all the scenarios in their head and all the scenarios that they ran, I don't think McLaren was expecting a 1-3 after the first lap. I think that threw them off. And you're right, this is still a team that doesn't know how to be a world championship team yet. They just have a car that is a world championship winning car, and they're going to win the Constructors' Championship. The deficit to Red Bull is now 10 points. When we're sitting here, where's the next race?
We go to Azerbaijan, Baku.
Oh, that's right, Baku. By the end of Baku, I mean, McLaren are probably going to be in the Constructors' Championship lead. But again, if you can just protect that 1-2 beyond the first lap, there was no way any Ferrari or anyone else was coming near that McLaren, especially this weekend.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and I think Katie definitely wants to make this point too, so I'll just intro this. Is it not within Oscar's right to race his teammate? Is it really his fault? Is it not the fault of those in charge to
I'm sorry. Wait, what was the first thing I said when we started this podcast? I like that they're letting McLaren race. And both
but then you just said it's Oscar's fault.
No, we don't want them racing.
You said
yes, it was his fault. I'm fine with letting them race later on. Not right then and there.
All of my issues with this are only on McLaren. And I hear a lot of people giving Oscar hell for this. First of all, you think someone managed by Mark Webber is going to let him roll over to Lando?
God, no.
Right.
No.
But I just feel like, yeah, he's a driver. He's going to go for it. If he sees that lane and he sees that opportunity, and you have the team saying things like, papaya rules. All I could hear the whole time was O'Doyle rules. Every single time.
Yes, thank you. I'm so happy someone said that. Thank you.
The elder millennial in me was like, yes.
Hey, just imagine Zach Brown. Hey, guys, who rules? Papaya rules.
Papaya rules. I knew I could
literally
count
their
on you guys.
season careens off a cliff and explodes.
It just feels like it was everything that I ranted on about last week about McLaren. It feels like they were like, Katie, let me just go ahead and validate every single thing you said about us, because everything was an in-house issue with them. And Charles, like, what he did with those tires was truly impressive. Like, when the car pulled up and he parked and you looked at those tires, they were insane. Like, he did such a beautiful job and he drove that race perfectly. Did McLaren lose it? Yeah, they did. Lando lost it again on lap 1, and that should have been team orders. You should have a clear number 1. You should have a clear number 2. And Zach Brown won't stop saying it. Yeah, we have 2 number 1 drivers, and it's like it's this PR talking point that they're holding on to, which I feel like everyone wants to scream from the rooftops. Like, Lando could win the drivers' championship. This year is so interesting because Max has come out and said, like, he doesn't think they're going to win any more races this year. McLaren's making all of these mistakes. It feels like Lando is an obvious one. Like, yeah, run the race, and then on the last lap, have him go ahead. Yeah. Bring in team orders. Like, that felt like such an obvious one to me, but it feels like, I don't know. I look at the last couple of years, like last year, Max ran away with it, and then it felt like you always had to work so hard to get it, and now it's like, who's going to win this? Like, it doesn't really feel like anybody deserves to.
I mean,
it's a really strange place in the season.
We've seen that before too. Obviously, earlier on in the season when they gave Lando team orders by not really giving him team orders, but by gaslighting him into letting Oscar pass him. Nobody liked that. Nobody appreciated that at all. I'm sure Oscar doesn't appreciate that. That was how he won his first race in Formula One after McLaren put him on such a bad strategy. They had to let him win. You also had that a couple, like 15 years ago or something like that, when it was, I believe, Rubens Barrichello and they gave him team orders to let Michael Schumacher pass on like the last lap, on like the last straight. On the very last like 100 meters, he like basically stopped the car, let him pass. And Michael Schumacher had to put him up on the top step of the podium so he could get his flowers. And he got fined for it because people were so pissed off. Nobody wants to see that. I'm not saying there's a perfect answer here, but I'm saying just get to the end of lap 1, build that lead. And then when you are 1-2, fine, go fight. But Katie, you are right. McLaren do have an opportunity to get both a Constructors and Drivers World Championship. And it was time weeks ago to say, here's our plan. Oscar, get on board. You're out of reach, right? Like Lando's within striking distance. You are unfortunately out of reach. Okay. You've been driving great. We're going to bring you home 1-2 every time. Next year, there's all to fight for. Next year, both of you can go for the world championship. Like, I don't see a problem in that, especially since Lando is the senior driver on this team. But do give your props to Oscar because there is no clear number 2 on this team. And what he has managed to do in just his second year in Formula One is insane.
It is.
That kind of speaks to cross-sport comparison real quick, but it's like when you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none, right? Because you don't have a clear leader. And they don't want to define a leader. And I think it's because they don't really know in their heart of hearts whether Lando's going to be the long-term first driver or if it's going to be Oscar. Like Oscar's so green and he's shown so much potential. He also fell into their laps because the way Alpine handled that whole situation. They're like, do we waste this and just put Lando ahead now? Like for right now, they should. What you just said is absolutely right, Sean. What they should do is put Lando as the priority and say, look, we're going for the whole thing. But next year, you guys can duke it out from race 1. And that should be the approach.
And the other thing too is it's hard to say, like, as a Lando Norris fan, he hasn't proven that you should put him number 1.
Other than the standings.
No, he hasn't.
Standings right now.
Yes, other than the standings, and he had a better start to the year. I mean, you look at the last 5-6 races, Oscar has outscored him. You look at how they have been driving lately. Oscar is driving better. You obviously put the last race aside. He has just proven that he is just about equal to Lando in everything except from like maybe qualifying. Lando's real quick over 1 lap. But at the start of the race, and honestly, again, like you saw some tire spin from every team this time around. The track was it was repaved recently, and it looked a little slick there on lap 1 when the tires weren't up to temperature. I do have to say, kind of want to backdoor blame Zhou Guanyu, who was literally idling up to 20th place on the grid. You literally even had Crofty going, yeah, he needs to speed it up. Because the McLarens have been sitting on the grid for like a minute straight as Joe is just literally going like 15 miles an hour around the final turn. And it's like, that should be illegal.
That's very fair.
That is very fair. I'm sorry. I watched this happen. I'm like, bro, what are you doing? Just get into 20th place already. Stop it. Like, this is not your race.
Grid. Yeah.
It's about Nicholas Latifi, impacting a world championship race. Sorry.
Hey, keep my goat's name out of your mouth. Just kidding. We can talk about him all you want. We can always talk about Latifi. Have you guys ever seen the vibes so bad in a cool down room? Like, I mean, Lando is just like, that'd be a good thought exercise, actually, because I feel like Lewis and Seb was a funny one for Montreal. Like, there are some good historical ones.
There are some good ones. Or Seb and Mark Webber.
Seb and Mark. Great example.
Lewis and Nico.
Like, Lando is
that was bad every year.
Head in hand. Like, he was like going through it. But you know what? I'm going to keep dishing out to Lando because he made all those comments about Lewis that if he's in the best car, he should be winning every race. But I'm like, I have to reap what I sow. Oh no!
Isn't it funny how karma works, so Katie?
Funny how it's not always that easy because you actually have to lead after lap 1. Turn 1 would even be nice. I take turn.
Okay, to be fair, he got to turn like 2 or 3 this time.
And then what happened?
Happened? Exactly. Yeah.
I was like,
what? I can't wait to see Drive to Survive this season. That's for sure.
There are I feel like they need to have 24 episodes.
They need to have a
even
part 2
this
season. Yeah.
Should be its own whole big episode. Charles winning in Monaco could be its own. If I'm a producer of that show, I have a hard time picking each episode. Whereas last year they're like, Christ, how do we work around the fact that Max just won his 650th straight race? They have different problems now.
This is one of the most insane seasons in Formula One history, and you now have 4 drivers with multiple wins. With Charles winning in his second race this season.
This is a dream. This is the parity we always hope for, and we rarely ever get.
This is what we wanted. This is what we certainly didn't think we were going to get, but like, wow, this is awesome. I just really hate that we had to or have to keep talking about my team and their shortcomings. Like, that's getting annoying to me.
Yeah.
Not to be.
I thought after last week, Lando's sailing away with a 22-second victory.
Nope.
I'm like, here we go. Okay, I finally don't have to worry about McLaren anymore.
What did I say last week, Sean? Show me that you can do it again throughout a whole weekend. Oh, yikes.
You know what, Katie? I want you to stop being mean to me.
Okay, I'm going to mute my mic for the rest of the podcast. I'm just going to be nice.
Rivalry.
Oh, gosh.
No, Sean, it's to a point where I actually have a bit of empathy for you about this.
It's just
tough
getting
to watch. It's tough to watch.
It is tough to get. And I never thought as a McLaren fan. I never thought as a McLaren fan, like when I started following the sport, where they were to where they are now. I never thought they'd actually be in this position. Now that they are, I just want to like slap Zach Brown and be like, just let Lando win a race. You can win both championships, but you have to take action. Okay. Feelings aside for Oscar, you'll have all the time in the world to win a race next year, but you need to just do something. Like I don't care what it is.
I think Zach likes
Make
it.
a plan.
Zach's the fun parent, man. He wants to be Lando's buddy. He doesn't want to be the parent's got to come down on him. He's looking to mom for the discipline.
I'm not asking for him to come down on Lando. I'm asking for him to come down on like Andre Stella. Just be like, hey, what are we doing actually? Like, are we trying to have our cake and eat it too? I don't know if that's possible this year.
Well,
you need a plan. No plan is not a plan.
Gold team rules. Papaya
Sean, team rules.
As much as you're struggling through all this, and it's a good place. It's a good problem to have. It's a good place to be in for you. It's not a great place for me to be in because Red Bull, the once dominant team with the best driver in the grid, suddenly is an afterthought, and Max can't even steer the damn car. And Sergio Perez gets on the mic afterward and says, I've been having these problems for 8 to 10 races. And now suddenly Max is having these problems too. And he didn't even say it like vindictively. He just said it like, now it's affecting him too. I don't know what to do. Like, they're freaking lost, man.
And to Sergio's credit, like, he hasn't been doing too bad over these past couple of races. He's been treading water, and we all wanted to come down on him for that. But now Max is treading water too. And it's like, ooh, yeah, this car is, I can't remember a time in our fandom of Formula One where a car has just gone from the just absolute most dominant car
Aston
on the track.
Mercedes 2022.
Oh, the weird melted chocolate side pod.
If you would have let me finish my sentence, I would have said in the span of a season.
Oh, well, that's not what we do. We don't let each other finish our sentences in this show.
No, we don't. Clearly.
Katie's muted.
Yeah, Katie muted her mic. Thank God.
What? Oh, wow. I'm glad she didn't answer your call on Saturday night, John. Come back, Katie, please.
Katie, come back. You can
I will blame it all on you.
Me.
I'm surprised you can sing, Sean.
You can do it all.
I don't have much of a voice this week, Nick.
No, I just meant because of our voices. I've never questioned Sean's lack of singing ability. Don't worry about that. Oh, Lord.
Red Bull, but they're lost. Like, Aston Martin is one that in season, like, they weren't quite at the top, but it felt like they were kind of trending that way.
Yeah, true, yeah.
Whereas Mercedes, it was clearly the new design of the car, and then nothing came out of it, and they were porpoising to the moon and back. But yeah, Aston's the only one kind of recently I could think of, because they had that really big jump up, and then it was like, oh, things are pretty Alpine, but like not over a season.
Yeah,
but it's go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, this needs to be studied. Like, scientists need to study this, and I'm guessing it has something to do with the fact that Adrian Newey is now like on gardening leave, as they call it, because he's leaving the team. So obviously, they're not going to allow him to develop the car, come up with upgrades, or fix anything that's broken on it, because he can take that to wherever he goes next, Aston Martin. So yeah, I think that's a huge loss. And also, if you're Aston Martin, allegedly, you're looking at this going, if that's what happens when he leaves a team, even for like over the span of a couple of months, Imagine what can happen when he comes in and fixes our car.
Yep.
I think it's that, but then also like all of the drama with Horner and Yas, like there's been so much turmoil with them while they were still driving really, really well. But it feels like the car isn't there as much anymore. But it's really wild for everybody at the top to be kind of infighting. And I thought it would catch up with them, but not this quickly.
Imagine a day, like 2 years ago. Imagine a day where Max Verstappen in a Red Bull was coming home P7 on merit.
Yeah,
On-
like he
on
was like,
pace
oh, not
and
a
merit
bad
alone.
drive.
It's wild.
Simply lovely, huh?
Oh God.
I wish Charles said that when he won the race.
He has more class.
So
You know
at
what?
a dig at
Charles ain't-
Lando.
Yeah.
Charles ain't built like that. Charles ain't built
I
like
know
that.
he's not, but I so wish he did that as a dig to Lando.
Charles is the guy that dates models and has cute little wiener dogs. Like that's his lifestyle. Like that's
Pretty
his.
good life.
Yeah.
That's a good life. I'm a little envious of
I'm
that.
not complaining about it, but he's not someone that goes for the smoke.
He's
Yeah.
not.
No, he's not.
Leo Leclerc is though.
Yeah.
Leo Leclerc will
Yeah.
go for that smoke.
Do we
I'm
have
gonna
any?
roll it for Leo?
Do we have anything else to say about this race? Or are we done here?
Vibes notes, Katie.
She has. none.
I said to Nick before the call, I actually didn't have my book with me when I watched it this time. So I just brought
I
my
got one.
You know what it would have been in there? Mamma Mia! That was one of my favorite call. I just man, do I love hearing a good Mamma Mia during the Italian Grand Prix on the radio. That's something to know about me.
My
Chef
only
Boyardee.
vibes note would be bad vibes. The Italian Grand Prix.
For your team.
McLaren fans. For everyone
for
else,
your
I
team.
thought that was a simply lovely Grand Prix. But
I also
definitely a few talking points in that one.
I also just wanted to comment on Nico Hulkenberg just like crashing into everybody just because he could. And like twice he just rammed into people. I was like, oh, okay. All right. So much for the great season you've been having. Bam, you've been hit. Bam, you've been hit.
We did neglect to mention that his teammate Kevin Magnussen has finally been given a race ban because he
Yes.
reached 12 penalty points. So Ali Behrman will be racing in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
Welcome back, Ollie.
Hey, Kevin, you know what? Probably your last season in Formula One. At least you're going out on an interesting note here.
I love that he got
He
a
even
race
got a point in the
ban
race,
and
too.
a point. Exactly.
And the
Yeah.
point.
He could do it all.
Gets a 10-second penalty, gets banned for a race, still brings Haas a point. Kevin Magnussen, folks.
And another thing that I guess we should touch on, because this was pretty interesting. Kimi Antonelli, that crash. Why was he doing the most? That was giving a little bit of, oh my God, who just crashed out in free practice 3? Why am I losing my mind?
Logan Sargent?
Logan
last
Sargent.
Yeah.
Yeah, who's
Yeah.
the one that was just kicked out of F1?
Keep my king's name out of your mouth.
I'm sorry, I know it's too soon. Subconsciously I was blocking his name from my mind. But yeah, that wasn't a super good look. And they panned to George, and he's just kind
He
of
just
like,
is like
"Oh
he
my
takes the headset off.
Because that was his
it's
car.
so
He's
much
like,
worse when it's
crap."
not your car." Like that wasn't a very good welcome to F1 Kimi Antonelli moment.
You know what it read
And
like
then later
to
that
me
day, I
was-
think he got or the next day, he got confirmed to be the driver
Yeah,
for next
you
year.
crash your car on a Friday, you get a job on a Saturday. Look at you. Congrats.
And like 12 minutes into Friday.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Toto's like, yeah, about 5 minutes after Lewis said he was going to Ferrari, I knew it was going to be Kimi. It's like, well, why'd you wait so damn long? But the funny thing is that moment read to me like, oh, I'm driving an F1 car. Yay. I'm going to see if this makes it go fast. Yerp, right into the wall off a track that wasn't rubbered in yet. It was just like, oh, nice. Way to go. Congrats. It all
The
worked
Italian
out.
Grand Prix, folks. Should we go to NFL now?
Yes, we should.
All right. Our final division preview. The AFC West awaits. And if you don't know how we do this on the Gridiron Podcast, it's like this. We're going to show you the schedule for each and every NFL or AFC West team. If you are watching on Twitch, Twitter, or YouTube, or if you're just listening, you can follow along because I read out the schedule. And then at the conclusion of that, I give an over-under win total from the Sean Barry Sportsbook. There's no math. There's no algorithm. It's just whatever number pops into my head.
Vibes.
It's pure vibes. That's what the Sean Barry Sportsbook is all about. So, Nick, without any more gilding the lily, no more ado, the AFC West. Let's go. We start with the division champs, the two-time defending Super Bowl champs, going for the three-peat,
Hold on.
It's Taylor's version.
Gilding the Lily twice in 2 weeks, Sean.
Twice in 2
I
weeks.
hope that you just do this every show now.
I will. I'm going to slip it in there somehow.
Nice.
All right, here's the Chiefs schedule, Taylor's version. Week 1, they're taking on the Ravens in exactly less than 48 hours from when we're recording this. Week 2, taking on the Bengals. That's a yikes and a double yikes. Or as Myron Cope would say, the great late Myron Cope, a yoy and a double yoy. Then you get the Falcons week 3 on the road, Chargers week 4 on the road, week 5 at home against the Saints. Really early bye week for the two-time defending champs in week 6. Then 7 and 8 on the road against the Niners and Raiders. Back home week 9 to take on the Bucs. Week 10, you've got the Broncos at home as well. 11 and 12 on the road against the Panthers and Bills. Reverse those two. Week 13 and 14, Raiders and Chargers at home. Week 15 on the road in Cleveland at Huntington Bank Field. Nick, how are we feeling about that one?
Awful.
Yeah, it's a name. They all suck.
They're like, oh, it's got a ring to it. It's like,
all
no,
these
it doesn't.
sponsored stadium names
It's not
suck.
have a ring to it. Yeah.
Then we got the Texans at home week 16, then rounding off 2 road games against the Steelers on Christmas Day, and then the Broncos to finish things off at Mile High week 18. This is still the Kansas City Chiefs. And no matter what they do, no matter what happens, they are always there, and it's insufferable. So for this, I mean, they're going to win this division. Like, that's just like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. I'm going to go over under 12.5 wins, guys, for the Kansas City Chiefs. Going high.
Miss Canadian Queen, step up to the podium.
I'm going with the over.
Mm-hmm.
This is the team that everyone's got their eye on this season. Obviously, the big question is, can they go for the three-peat? I know everybody talks about how hard it is. But damn, when I look at this roster, like, is this the best roster that Patrick Mahomes has ever had? Because it kind of looks like it to me. Oh, it's not. I'm okay, Sean. I'm curious to hear about that after.
I mean, Tyreek Hill would be a great, adjustment to any of the receivers they have on this roster. I'm just saying, like, they've had deeper rosters before.
But I
don't
mean,
think
like,
this is the best
collectively
version.
as a whole, because Tyreek obviously is the best receiver, but as a whole, like, what it kind of looked like it to me. But yeah, I hear you when you say that. I love that they added Hollywood Brown in free agency. I love Xavier Worthy. He looks like someone I want to sign up to watch on Sundays.
Love that
Their
they
defense-
dropped Kadarius Toney.
Love that two-time Super
Given
Bowl
to
champion
those
Kadarius Toney. It does hurt to lose L'Jarius Sneed on defense, but honestly, like, there are a few DCs that I trust more than Spags. I think they have one of the best coaching staffs in the league. Like, I don't see a lot of obvious weakness on this team. I have 13-4. I was even thinking 14-3. I'm just really excited about this team, and I don't want to be like, I wish that we could kind of mix it up and get some different teams in the mix. But honestly, I just think they're a shoe-in to win the division again. A, just the other teams aren't as good, but B, I just think the Chiefs look like it again this year.
I think that this team could start the season 0-2. I legitimately think that. I think that they could lose at home to the Ravens and the Bengals. The boogeyman, Joe Burrow, coming back to Burrowhead.
They already
seriously.
exercised that demon once.
No, seriously. I think this team could start the season 0-2 and then lose maybe 1 or 2 games for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
It seems like they've done this in the past too, where they'll start like 2-2, or it'll be like 4-2. It's like, are the Chiefs okay? Are they all right there? And then they just rattle off like 6 or 7 wins in a row. It's like, yep, there they are. They're back. I'm taking the over 2. And I'm going to say they lose those first 2 games. I think they lose at home against the Ravens and Bengals, and we're hitting the panic button week 3. Are the Chiefs washed? Are they done? Is Patrick Mahomes, like, we're just going to, all those narratives, they're going to be out there. And then you watch, they'll still finish with 13-14 wins.
Yep.
So, I mean, I'm taking the over just because, like, I'd be in history alone says take the over. Everybody's talking about, can they three-peat? I'm not worried about the three-peat. I'm worried about whether they're going to win 13 games. And I think they're going to win 13 games. They're going to win the division. And Sean, you're absolutely right. They could be 0-2. Hell, realistically, they could come out of week 5, 2-3, 3-2. Then that wouldn't make me panic at all, because from there on out, the Niners game in San Francisco, Santa Clara, will be tough. The game in Cleveland, maybe. The game at home versus the Texans, maybe. And that's it. And at the Bills, perhaps, but I just they're too strong on offense, and that's the key. Is that they won that Super Bowl. I think we overlooked this fact. They won that Super Bowl last year with their defense. Like they held the Ravens to 10 points in Baltimore. They shut down the Niners for the most part in the Super Bowl, including in overtime, to then go down and score the game-winning touchdown. They weren't an explosive offense that we know them to be or knew them to be a few years ago. They really haven't been for a while. Their average depth of target and just the way that they throw the football has been shorter and shorter and shorter over the last 3 years. But guess what? That's about to change because they have a guy who can take the top off the defense again. His name is Katie already mentioned him, Xavier Worthy. They're going to get Hollywood Brown back before long from his sternoclavicular injury, which is more associated with car crashes than football. Yet Tyreek Hill suffered a similar injury in 2019, and he was back after about a month, and it's been about a month. So he'll be back probably by week 2. That receiving core will be better than it has been in the last few years. Patrick Mahomes, we know what he can do. They know they have Isaiah Pacheco back there, and it's not the only running back that they have back there because they also picked up Samaje Perine, and they like this Carson Steele kid, this rookie on the roster as well. My concern is the secondary because the front seven's good. Spags, like you said, Katie, which I love to hear you say Spags because of your Canadian accent. Spags.
Spags.
Spags. He'll have that group, playing well. And they have Justin Reed and Trent McDuffie back there, and Trent McDuffie is a freaking dog. We just go look at the Super Bowl. He made a number of phenomenal plays. But then the rest of the group is like a little concerning, like Brian Cook at safety and Najee Johnson at corner and Shamari Connor at corner, and the depth may not be there. But that's still not going to concern me enough to think that they're going to do anything other than win 13 games. Like, they're going to win the division. They're going to be in the playoffs. And everyone's going to say, they can't three-peat. Nobody's ever done it. And they might be right. Because, again, history says, yeah, it's really hard to do. Nobody's done it in the NFL. But I'm not going to count them out until that clock hits triple zeros and they've lost the game. So 13 wins, back in the playoffs, division champs, rinse and repeat.
There you have it. We're all taking the over at 12.5. Next up, a team that finished second in the division last year with an 8-9 record. Remember, 2-3 years ago, we thought this division was going to be like some sort of juggernaut that was going to just kill each other.
You know when that was?
No.
As soon as Russell Wilson moved over. That was when they're like, every single quarterback is so sick.
Oh, how the times have changed. My word. What do we think about this division now? The Raiders finished second in this division last year with 8 wins, 9 losses. They no longer have the rotating door of quarterbacks. At least we hope not.
It's a broken rotating door.
Yeah.
I will say this though, getting to watch or the prospect of watching Gardner Minshew in Las Vegas play for Raiders Nation, the black hole, that does excite me just because of the character he is, because he is now the starting quarterback in Las Vegas. Here we go with the Raiders schedule. Starting off week 1 and 2 on the road, taking on the Chargers and Ravens. Double yoy. Weeks 3 and 4 at home against the Panthers and Browns. Weeks 5 on the road against the Broncos. 6 back at home against the Steelers. Week 7 on the road against the Rams. Week 8 back home against the Chiefs. Then you've got the Bengals on the road. Week 9. Week 10 is the bye. 11 on the road in Miami. And then week 12 at home against the Broncos. Weeks 13 and 14, Chiefs and Bucks. Then you've got the Falcons and Jaguars coming to town. Week 17, against the Saints. And then the Chargers come to the Strip week 18 to round things off. This is a team that kind of confuses me a little bit.
Me too.
Like, I can see them. I'm not going to play this game right now. Let me just give you the over/under. I'll give you 8.5.
Yeah,
I'll give you 8.5. Okay. All right, I'll give the Raiders 8.5 because we know what Gardner Minshew is, right? Like, we know what he is. He's the super sub. He is a bottom tier starting quarterback in this league or a top tier, reliever. But we'll see. We'll see what these guys are. Give you 8.5.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. They confuse me. This is another team I just don't know quite where they are right now. The vibes don't look super immaculate in Vegas, but they did look a lot better at the end of the season with Antonio Pierce. But that being said, like, the vibes with Josh McDaniels are just so bad that I feel like no matter what after that, who knows? But yeah, there's just a lot of question marks for this team. Like, I don't know what's going to happen with Devontae Adams. I'm a fan of Gardner Minshew, especially vibes-wise. I'd like to think him and I share a very similar vibe in almost every way, minus being good at football. Just not as a starter. Like, I love him as a backup. someone like Devontae, like when you played with MVP level Aaron Rodgers, like that's hard to move away from that. In terms of like reasons why I'll tune in, I'm excited to see what Brock Bowers can do. But if you don't really have the quarterback, like I don't know how they're going to use him. I'm excited about this defense. I think their defense is more serviceable than their offense, but they do have a second place schedule. I just don't love their QB situation. Don't love their offense. I have the under. I'm thinking 7-10, but it could be a few higher than that, and I wouldn't be shocked. Like you said, Sean, I'm confused by them too. Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins, though. Oof,
yeah,
they have good pieces on that defense.
That pass rush, especially.
Ooh.
You know what? I'm also going to take the under, and I'll tell you why. It's because I don't really know what, like, this team doesn't have a high ceiling, certainly. I'm going to take the under, too, because I love how every time they host, look, they host the Steelers. That's going to be a home game for the Steelers. They host the Browns. That's going to be a home game for the Browns. Obviously, it's going to be a home game for the Chiefs. Like, they have all these tough teams coming into their house that travel well. Look at they got the Jags coming in there, for God's sake. You know, I'm being facetious when I say that. Exactly. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to take the under just because they cannot sell out their own arena when some teams are in town. And Gardner Minshew is not a guy that's going to lead you to the playoffs or even possibly a winning record. So I'm taking the under.
I hate that both of you took the under just because I knew I was going to take the under from the moment I saw them play their week 2 preseason game. You know, the game in which Antonio Pierce expected Minshew or Aiden O'Connell to take control of the starting job and go win it on the field. And both of them stumbled and tripped and fell face first onto a rake repeatedly.
Sideshow Bob all over the place.
All over the place. It was a miserable watching experience. I watched it live and it was awful. And I, at the end of that game, said, let them play week 3 too, because I don't know who the hell should be the starter right now. They both sucked. Gardner Minshew plus backup, tip of the cap for what he did in Indianapolis last year with Shane Steichen. Didn't lose them any games, kept them afloat, kept them in the playoff race all the way to the end of the season. It's about as good as you're going to get from him. And I'm not excited to see him operate this offense this year. This offense has talent. They have 2 good tight ends. And I see a lot of 12 personnel in their future with Brock Bowers, who was like a generational talent coming out of Georgia, and Michael Mayer, who was at one time thought to be a first-round pick, ended up going the second round out of Notre Dame. I mean, even Harrison Bryant can catch some touchdown passes. It's a good group. Should see them lean on them a lot. You might see them run the football a lot because anytime you get to get out of Minshew's hands, that's probably pretty good for you. The downside is that Devontae Adams is not going to be happy about that. It's not that the receiving core isn't good. It's not their offensive line isn't even that good. It's actually a nice group. I just don't see a high ceiling for them. And after watching Devontae get upset with the situation last year on that documentary on Netflix, Receiver, which was a fantastic look into how these players operate during the season.
Yeah.
I just don't feel good about the outlook for this offense. And I hate to say it because I'm not a hater, but there's a certain shine that comes with a player-friendly interim coach that usually doesn't carry over. You've seen it. I even saw it with the Browns. They replaced Butch Davis with Terry Robisky one year, and he's a player-friendly coach, and they were a little bit better, and he didn't even get the job after that, understandably so. That stuff usually doesn't carry over. So I'm worried about AP and whether he'll be able to actually be a solid head coach as the permanent head coach, not the interim head coach. It's a little bit of projection, but that's just my gut feeling. The people in Vegas, say what you will about the fact that they don't have a lot of Raider fans there, and a lot of them come in from the Bay Area or LA to go to games, and then everybody else fills out the stadium when they're making a trip out to Vegas. Weekend in Vegas, gonna go watch the Browns play. Can't tell you how many people I've talked to about, I'm going out to Vegas for the Browns game. Yeah, you and everybody else in this town, because they can't. I'm sure those tickets are cheap, and it's a reason to go to Vegas. The people who are in Vegas who cover this team,
actually, they're one of the most expensive tickets in the season this year. Browns at Raiders, Steelers at Raiders, Chiefs at Raiders. 3 of the top 5 most expensive, cheapest tickets in the NFL this year.
Damn.
Demand is high for the visiting squad.
But you're going out to Vegas.
I'm going on a weekend in Vegas. We're going to have fun. We're going to watch football. But I'm going to say
I love your guys' Vegas voices.
Yeah,
so much.
Vegas.
What happens here stays here. People in Vegas have pitched this to me this way. I was like, oh man, if that's your hope, this is not going to be good. They said, the Browns last year made the playoffs with 5 different starting quarterbacks and a really good defense. do you think something similar could happen with the Raiders? And I said, no, because what the Browns did last year was lightning in a damn bottle. Joe Flacco came off the couch and threw for 300 yards in 4 straight games. No quarterback in Browns franchise had done that. That is the outlier. That's the anomaly. That is not something that you can lean on to find hope for your team. And if your quarterback is who Gardner Minshew is, who I know who he is right now, I know his ceiling is low and his floor is relatively high for a plus backup. And Aiden O'Connell looks uncomfortable and looks bad in practice from what I've heard out there. Then this is going to be a bad situation. You have to lean too much in your defense, but the defense will keep them competitive. I just don't believe in the quarterback situation enough to think that they'll win more than 8 games. So that's why I go under.
All right. Moving on. Team that finished 3rd in the division last year. The Denver Broncos. Sean Payton remaking this team in his image. What that will look like, I don't know, because we don't have the excuse of Russell Wilson anymore, right? Like, this is all on Sean Payton now. You picked your quarterback, you picked your personnel. This is your bed. You got to lie in it now. As we bring up the schedule for the 2024 season, week 1 taking on the Seahawks on the road. Week 2 they welcome the Steelers to Mile High. Then weeks 3 and 4 on the road against the Bucks and Jets respectively. Back home for weeks 5 and 6 against the Raiders and Chargers. Week 7 you got the Saints on the road. Week 8 at home against the Panthers. Week 9 they're in Baltimore. Week 10 in KC. Week 11 back at home against the Falcons. You've got the Raiders on the road. In week 12. Week 13, you got the Browns at home. And then week 14, a really late bye. Man.
Yes.
Week 15, you've got the Colts at home. And then you've got the Chargers and Bengals on the road and wrap things up week 18 against the Chiefs back at home. We got Bo Nix under quarterback, right? This was we wondered who was going to be quarterback going into this. Was it going to be Jarrett Stidham? Was it going to be Zach Wilson? Was it going to be Bo Nix? And Sean Payton answered that pretty early in the preseason. He handed the keys of the kingdom over to Bo Nix. First rookie quarterback that's going to start for this franchise since one John Elway. Ho-hum, right? Yeah. What did they also win 8 games last year, I believe I had down in my notes? Yes, they also had 8 games. I know it really is wild. They were relevant for most of the season, then kind of fell off there, and that's when they said, okay, this Russell Wilson experiment is officially over. 8 wins last year. You got a rookie quarterback. I don't know why, but I don't get a good vibe from Sean Payton. I feel like this is almost like a Mike Ditka in New Orleans type situation. Like, I don't know if this is, we can blame Russ all we want, but maybe, just maybe, like Sean Payton is also part of the problem. So they won 8 games last year. Tell you what, 7.5. Do they do it again?
I like that perspective. I haven't really thought about that. I'm gonna take the under. I'm thinking 7 and 10. But again, I don't really like. I will turn on a Broncos game to see Bo Nix. I think he looked really great in the preseason, but obviously I want to like be aware of, who else looked good? Kenny Pickett. But I'm sorry, I don't want to throw salt in the wound.
Again,
but
keep my hey, you know what? Fun story, real quick, Katie. Nick and I were at the Kent State Pitt game on Saturday, and they were showing like Pitt Panthers in the NFL, and up on the scoreboard, and they were showing all these guys, Jordan Whitehead, and I don't know who else they showed Nick, but they showed Kenny Pickett's picture. And the crowd of about, I'd say, 30,000 started to boo loudly. This was his home team. Like these, Pitt fans are Steelers fans, but these were Pitt Panthers fans booing the best quarterback in school history.
that makes me so sad.
I know. I kind of looked around. I go, "Are we really booing Kenny Pickett?
Yeah, it made me
really
sad
doing
too.
this?
That's very wild.
All right." So the feeling is not mutual, or maybe the feeling is mutual in Pittsburgh too. Anyway, continue, Katie.
That makes me really sad for Kenny Pickett. But I hope that Bo Nix is a good fit with Sean Payton. And I think like for Sean Payton, he's probably better case where he can like follow the script a bit more, because Russell Wilson loves to just like do his own thing. But they did win 8 games with Russell Wilson. Hopefully this is an upgrade at QB, but I can't explain why, but I'm allowing myself to get excited about Bo Nix. It's happening.
Good.
And their schedule doesn't look that bad. Like when I go through, it's like, oh, they can kind of win a few here and a few there. Like I don't think this is the year, but this is a year I think they can start to put some pieces together and then see what it's going to look like moving forward. But with their easy schedule, like I could see it being higher than 7, but I have about 7 and 10 right now. I just don't quite know yet.
So you're going under.
Yeah.
Under, yeah, 7 and 10.
Going under. I'm kind of on the same page with you. That first 4-week stretch, I mean, that's pretty rough. 3 games on the road.
Yeah.
You get the narrative of Russ coming back into Denver week 2, but the Seahawks aren't going to be an easy out. The Steelers aren't going to be an easy out. The Bucks, the Jets on the road, not going to be easy outs. I mean, they really are throwing Bo Nix into the fire, into the frying pan, even like early on this season. So
luckily, he has a ton of experience playing football.
Yes, luckily he played 6 years of college football. Yeah, it gets easier from there. Aside from Ravens, 2 games against the Chiefs. Browns aren't going to be easy. Bengals. I don't think this schedule is as easy as you're giving it credit for, to be honest with you. So I'm going to go under.
Sean, you had
There's
a nice
some stretches
little.
though. Like I look at Raiders, Chargers, Saints, Panthers. Like I think they have some blocks.
They do. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I agree. I think
like in terms of in their division compared to some of the others we've seen.
I think 7 and 10 is within reach there, but I'm going to go on the under too.
All right. Well, tip of the cap to you, Sean, first for doing a reverse Jay-Z, by saying they're throwing him into the fire. In fact, they're throwing him into the frying pan.
Yeah, when I said that, I was like, wait a minute. No. You go from the frying pan into the fire.
Yes, it was once Sean Carter who once said, fresh out the frying pan into the fire, I'd be the Music Man's #1 desire. And with that in mind, and as Big B said in the chat, Bo Nix.
Bo Nix.
Look,
hey, Big B, jump on the train. I'm allowing myself to get unrealistically excited about this quarterback.
Yes, and it's not even unrealistic. It's not unrealistic because, as you said, he has a ton of experience, and he also looked very sharp in the preseason. And more than anything, Sean, it's funny that you made the Mike Ditka reference because I made that reference on NFL Daily like a week and a half ago. That's how I felt about Sean Payton, which was country club, halfway to the country club. This is his pre-retirement job because he was stuck with Russell Wilson. Now he's not. This is the guy he wanted. This is the guy they went up and drafted in the first round. This is the guy that he can work with. And even in the preseason, I know it's vanilla defenses, but
also
he looked
the only guy that was left in the first round.
But he wanted him. He got him where he wanted him.
You have to say you wanted him. They could have gotten Michael Penix. Oh, we wanted him.
No, I'm telling you, man, this is going to be a good partnership. And Nix has everything he needs between the ears to succeed. It's all about the question of athleticism and ability. And I think he's going to be able to do what Sean Payton asks him to do. And they're going to be better than people expect. I'm taking the over. I'm taking the over because I am very much looking forward to what the Broncos look like with Sean Payton leading them and Russell Wilson no longer on the roster. And it kind of feels like a prove it year. And I feel like he finally has most of what he wants to be able to go do things the way he wants them done and doesn't have to be such a curmudgeon anymore. Big fan of this team's potential. Don't know if they're going to make the playoffs, but they're going to be fun to watch. Workable schedule. I mean, I looked at this and I thought, they can come out of the first month 3-1 with the only loss being to the Jets. And I don't know why we're making it Broncos at Seahawks a week 1 tradition. Sorry, Katie. 2 times in 3 years.
I hate it. It's so boring.
Yeah. I think they still thought that, Russell Wilson was going to be on the roster at that point.
Maybe.
He was already a Steeler at that point, but yes, you're right. Look, I think that there's a lot of room for surprise with this team. And it's not because I think their roster is like fantastic, but I do think that it's the same team that a couple of years ago we were like, oh, all they need is a good quarterback with that receiving core. Well, 2 of those 3 guys are gone now. But now it's Cortland Sutton. It's Marvin Mims, who they love a lot. Veteran Josh Reynolds. I know Katie's always been a fan of Josh Reynolds, and now he's in Denver. Their receiving core is so good that they were like, hey, Tim Patrick, we'll see ya. Go somewhere else. We don't need you, even though you're on your way back. I think the line's probably good enough to block for him. Javonte Williams is back and healthy. Audric Estime is going to be a power back along the goal line, the kid from Notre Dame. And the defense, we know what they have there. And Pat Surtain, Riley Moss has won a starting job there opposite him. In the front 7, probably good enough. Zach Allen had a good year in Arizona a couple years ago, went over to Denver. He's a sneaky good player. I think this team's going to be better than people realize. I'm not saying they're going to push the Chiefs to the division, but I do think that they're going to push somebody for a wild card spot. Outside looking in, maybe, but going to be much better than people realize. So I'm going with the over.
All right. Speaking of a team that had such a deep and good receiving core that they said goodbye to their best 2 ones, let's talk to the Chargers there, Nick. Mike Williams gone. Keenan Allen gone. Head coach gone. Thank God. I mean, come on, like you got to call it what it is. And now you got Jim Harbaugh in town. We're playing Harbaugh ball in LA in Englewood.
Wearing his cleats on the field before the game because for some reason he still thinks he's a player.
I mean, hey man, look at that
Cleats
footwork
and
he displayed.
khakis.
He can still run. He can still gun, man. All right, Chargers finished 5-12 last season. Interesting
Dumpster
offseason.
fire.
Yeah, interesting offseason is all I can kind of say. Week 1, they got the Raiders at home, and then weeks 2 and 3 on the road against the Panthers and Steelers. Weeks 4, you got the Chiefs at home. Their bye week is week 5. Then 6 and 7 on the road against the Broncos and Cardinals. Got the Saints coming to town week 8. Browns on the road week 9. Then you've got a 3-game homestand against the Titans, Bengals, and Ravens. 2-week road trip to take on the Falcons and Chiefs. Weeks 15, 16, Bucks, Broncos at home. Weeks 17 and 18, rounding things off with a 2-week road swing to take on the Patriots and the Raiders. Won 5 games last year. Don't have Keenan Allen. Don't have Mike Williams. Don't have Austin Eckler. This team looks different on offense. However, I believe that Jim Harbaugh is a good coach. And specifically, I think he's a good NFL coach. You still have the most important position on the field well covered for Justin Herbert at quarterback. This team is going to win more than 5 games this year. Like they're not gonna win 5 games or less than 5 games. So I'm gonna go over under 8.5. Get a healthy Justin Herbert. Get Jim Harbaugh in there shaking things up. I can tell I surprised you, Nick, but this is a team that I believe it has the right pieces in place. They just need to put it together. They don't have Brandon Staley back there making huge miscalculations as head coach. Like that's at least worth a couple of wins, right?
Yeah, it's got to be. My favorite part about Chargers fans on Twitter and Instagram, especially on Instagram, I see it that any post they do, because before every single comment was like fire Staley, fire Staley, fire, and now on there people are hyped up, and a lot of the comments will be like fire Staley again. Like,
hey,
and I always go through and like a bunch of those.
I still week 18 last year, I still wanted to fire Canada, and they fired him after like week 8.
Blame Canada.
Yeah.
We welcome it this time, Matt Canada.
Katie, I might even blame Canada this year. It's not Arthur Smith's fault. It's Canada's fault.
Sure.
That's right. That's okay. We're sorry. I don't love the receivers. We're sorry. I don't love the receiving room. But they also, it feels like they never had Keenan Allen or Mike Williams. Like,
I know.
They were always
for
just
real.
so hurt.
As someone that drafted both of them at one point or another on fantasy football, we never had those guys.
Like their receiving room was so good, but it felt like they were just never on the field either together or just either of them. Justin Herbert, it sounds like he's still kind of dealing with that foot injury. When I look at their team on paper, I don't get super excited. Some positives. You know how I feel about Jim Harbaugh, the person off the field, but he, as a coach, is a guy that feels like he turns programs around. I think they're going to run the ball a ton. I think they've got a pretty easy schedule, and with them able to run the ball, like I think it's just going to look so different. Like with Staley, it just feels like it couldn't look much worse than what they did. Like so many weird decisions. This feels like it's just going to open things up more for Herbert. Like they can bring a little more play action into it. Like I think the Harbaugh bump will win them a couple games. But even when there is hope with things like that, like I forever have to ask myself, are the Chargers going to Charger? Because they love to be a noun, but also a verb as a team. But I have 9 and 8, but I just don't feel confident with that. I think Harbaugh is someone that can really, really help them out, though.
So you're taking the over?
Over, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to take the under. I got him at 8 wins. I think that the Harbaugh bump, let's call it that, can get him at least a couple more wins. If Justin Herbert's healthy, that's worth a couple, or at least, it's going to get there. This is going to be a plucky team to play against because, again, I believe, characteristics aside, I believe in Jim Harbaugh, the coach. Luckily, Ohio State doesn't have to play the Chargers this year, Nick, right?
All right.
I do agree with you, though, Katie. Don't love their receiver room. And at the end of the day, I mean, the quarterback's got to throw it to someone, right? So
they're going
that's
to
why
run it a lot.
Yeah, I still think that this team is on the outside looking in, but you see the progress and you think, okay, now we need to surround Justin Herbert with the pieces. He was surrounded by the pieces, but you're right. Injuries all the time to Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, and Keenan Allen. Like it was hard to keep this team healthy on the field. Now you have to kind of re-surround your quarterback. But honestly, you can do that within a draft and free agency. So I'm taking the under, by the way. 8 wins.
Yeah. I'm glad that first Katie made every point that I want to make. So good job. Good on you, Katie. Secondly, one of the biggest points she made was the Harbaugh bump. Like that, I literally had that in my head. Like that's worth 2 wins. And then she just 30 seconds later, as I'm thinking about it, she just says it's worth like 2 wins. And I was like, oh, well, hell, I don't know what I'm going to talk about now. I'm just kidding.
Can we trademark that, by the way? Hashtag
Harbaugh bump. It sounds like a baby bump, but sure. I agree. Like I think he'll get you to 7. Like if we start at 5 last year, he'll get you to 7. Herbert will get you at least 1. But I still can't see them winning 9 games. Like I just don't feel great about this. I like where they're headed. I just think it's going to be a multi-year operation. And the problem is like, yeah, Katie's right. They're going to run the hell out of the football. They stocked their backfield to do just that. Hell, they went and picked up Hassan Askins, the old kid from Michigan, Harbaugh's guy. Of course, he went and picked him up off waivers, right? So you got Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, the old Baltimore duo. Maybe J.K. will make it through a season healthy for once. Kamani Vidal, who's a massive thighed individual who's going to play a role at some point, and then Haskins. They're going to run the ball. They have an offensive line set to run the ball. They have bookend tackles for the first time in ages. No longer do we have to sit back and say, boy, I'll tell you what, I don't really like Trey Pipkins at right tackle. Well, he's now your right guard, which is a little bit easier of a position to play for somebody like him. We could continue to go down the list of other players who did not work out at right tackle, but we don't have to because Alt's there now, and you know what you have in Rashawn Slater. So that should be good. And the receiving core, man, like Ladd McConkey, I think is going to be a stud in the NFL, but he has not been able to stay healthy during camp. And Quentin Johnston is 4th on this depth chart. That was a first-round pick last year, and I was kind of thinking he might not even make the team. A year from now, if he has another similar performance and doesn't take any strides, he might not make the team. Jerry Rice's kid is on this roster as like the last receiver there. It's just a group that I don't feel great about when it comes to passing the football. So they do have a couple of solid tight ends in Will Dissly and Hayden Hurst. Okay. Like it's workable. This offense can find ways to move the football. Defensively though, I don't see enough here to make me feel very good. And they just weren't a very good football team as a whole last year. I don't like to take one year to the next in the way I view teams. I try to see them on paper right now, but in this division and even with this schedule, which is 4th place schedule, you get to play teams like the Panthers and the Cardinals and the Saints and, the Falcons, who are going to be good, and the Titans. I just have a hard time believing that they're going to get to 9 wins. I think that they'll flirt with it and they'll get close and maybe they even finish strong. But and anytime you have a quarterback like Herbert, you got to give your team a shot. I don't have a ton of. If I was putting anything of value on the line, which I am prohibited from doing so as a league employee, and never have I and never will I. Just make sure
you stumbled through that a little bit.
Loyal to the shield.
There. Yeah, company man. I know who writes my checks. If I had to, though, I wouldn't put the least in this division on the Chargers.
Raj, if you're listening,
yeah,
I know you're not. But if you get caught with a bout of insomnia and want to see what your low-level writer is doing, I'm not betting.
So you're taking the under?
Yeah, I'm taking the under.
All right. Good on Katie for taking the over there. All right, that's the AFC West, guys, and that is what's up.
I was just going to say one little point about them last year, though, is I feel like if there was a team that stood out for being not quite as bad as their record, I feel like as someone that emotionally cares about the Chargers, there were a lot of games where it's like they were in it and then lost by 2 points. Like there was a lot of like stupid games where they played well.
Gold. That's fool's gold. That gives you all the false hope in the world. Oh, I listen to Browns fans do it for years. They went 4-12 last year, but they lost 4 games by 1 possession. So like if all those go their way, then they're like 8-8. It didn't work out that way because you lose games because you're not a good football team.
I know.
You could tell that. Nick, I was going to say you could tell Nick is emotionally invested in that.
I just hate. I'm not putting this on you, Katie. I hate that because I know it tricks a lot of fans. And I was growing up, I was a fan like that, and it just gives you so much false hope, and it always sets you up to get your heart broken.
Yeah, why can't you just let us live?
I don't want to see your heart broken, Katie. Okay, I don't want to see them break your heart.
I have a postal code in a land of delusion, and I appreciate that you let me continue to reside here.
Okay. All right.
That's a zip code for Americans.
Thank you. We know what a postal code is. While Katie is in Delulu land And Nick is in, post PTSD
Cleveland.
land with the talking point of one possession losses. That officially wraps up our NFL division previews, guys.
You know what we have left, though, Sean? I don't even
What
know
do
if
we
you're
have
aware of this, but Katie and I did a little producing while you were gone. Katie, what would you like to tell Sean? We're going to actually wrap this segment up.
Oh, I suggested on the call before we got on. I just thought
Well
maybe we
done.
need to do I'm looking at you, Nick, like, what did I promise and what am I going to
Golf clap.
underdeliver?
Oh,
Guys,
yeah.
I'm an idiot. We all know this. I mean,
No, you're not.
I thought it would be lovely because this is our last pod before week 1, where everything is still officially a blank slate. I would just love to hear your guys' Super Bowl picks.
Oh, boy.
Sean's like, I was not prepared.
I was
And
not
I also
prepared for
wasn't.
this. Clearly.
frankly, in order to maintain consistency, I'm going to go over to NFL.com real quick to figure out what I sent in because I
Super Bowl
forget.
preview.
See, I'd want to kind of
Steelers over the Bucks.
Not that
I'm
Nick
kidding.
bets, but I'd kind of want to like spread out my predictions in case one of them is right, and then I'm like, look, she called it.
You know what? Call Nick whatever you want, and you can call him a lot of things, but he does not flip-flop. He sticks with one prediction, and he goes for it.
Sean, what
That's
is your
true.
gut telling you for Super Bowl matchup?
To be honest with you, like at this point in the year, I've actually given this some thought, but I really haven't this time around. I do not think the Chiefs are going to three-peat. I'm probably now going to eat those words. So bookmark this for February, whatever, when they're raising the Lombardi Trophy again. Sorry, Chiefs. Man, I would like to say I believe the Super Bowl is going to be the Niners over the Bengals.
Whoa, I love that, and
I'm going Niners over Bengals.
I'm surprised by that.
I like that. I mean,
Whoa.
as we're talking today, the Niners just re-signed Trent Williams. They got Brandon Ayuk back. I think Brock Purdy is a quarterback that can win them a Super Bowl. Like you watch this kid and he can sling it. Okay, like they have the defense, they have the offense. There's no reason they have the coaching. There is no reason this team can't win a Super Bowl just because they haven't gotten over that mountain that is the Kansas City Chiefs. Big whoop. There's a lot of teams that can't beat the Chiefs, and I think that they're going to get over that hurdle this year because they don't even have to play them. It's like when, as a Steelers fan growing up, every year the Steelers won the Super Bowl twice, Super Bowl 40 and 43. Guess who they did not have to play in the postseason? The Patriots. Okay, is that a knock on the Steelers? No, because they still won the Super Bowl. Just because the Niners don't have to play the Chiefs this time around. Yeah, so I'm going to take the Niners over the Bengals.
Nick, do you have yours ready?
Yeah. I I was one of two people at NFL.com and NFL Network to make this choice. I am going with the Detroit Lions over the Houston Texans in a battle of two teams who have never reached the Super Bowl but get there.
What?
Stop! Nick, that was my pick.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Do you have the Lions winning?
Yes.
Wow.
That was very weird. I am allowed to bet, and I made a bet on the Houston Texans winning the Super Bowl.
Oh.
'Cause I
Whoa.
really like those odds.
So you have the
But
Texans over the Lions.
my gut tells me, my gut originally told me it was the Lions over the Chiefs, because I think that this is something's happening with the Lions right now.
Yes.
But I could kind of see Kansas City and Houston again. Like, that was such a fun matchup back when like Houston didn't really have a right being there.
Yeah.
And weren't they up like big time in the
24-0.
The old Bill
Yeah.
O'Brien Texans. Yep.
So I originally was thinking Chiefs, but I think they could be in that matchup, but then the Texans win this time. But I have the Lions winning the Super Bowl this year. I made the Texans bet only because I thought the numbers were really good, but I think the Lions, there's something happening.
Can you imagine the sheer pandemonium of a Detroit Lions Super Bowl parade?
Oh.
So when I went to my first Super Bowl, which is Sean's first Super Bowl, the 2019 season in Miami, Super Bowl 54, between the Niners and the Chiefs, I posted a picture in which I tried to summarize my feelings, which I simply said, no words. because I was truly speechless that Sean and I were at the Super Bowl. As you guys know, I have a very small cry or a couple tears come down my face right before kickoff at every Super Bowl because it never gets old. Somebody in my comments said, what would your caption be if it was the Browns? And I thought, I don't know how I'd handle that. And I don't think I'm ever going to see that, but I do think I'm going to see the Detroit Lions in the Super Bowl. And damn it, if it ain't against the Houston Texans, baby, let's do it. Let's get two teams that have never been there in that game. Why not?
I almost wish I went first because it's such a chaotic pick and I love it so much.
I wasn't. I was not prepared for that answer. I really wasn't.
If
I was not.
You guys know 2024 has been a year of chaos for me, and why not finish it with a chaotic pick?
It's hard for me to wrap my head around that, like to see the Detroit Lions in the Super Bowl because it's never been done, and not even that. They've never been close. Last year was the closest they'd been in like 50 years. So like I can't process that information, and I didn't think about that matchup at all. I still like my pick. I still think I have a high chance.
Now I will say this: I usually blow these pretty badly. Like I think I had the Bills over the Rams a few years ago, and it was the year the Rams were awful. So
I'd like to look back because I think we did this the last year. I'd like to look at what we.
I think I had the Bucks over the Bills 2 years ago, and that was Brady's last year when the Bucks had a losing record. So
yeah.
Oh,
that was a tough one.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, this has been episode 46 of the Gridiron Podcast. As always, remember to like, subscribe, listen, share with your friends, and you can even email us now. Email address is below if you're watching on Twitch, Twitter, or YouTube, and if you're listening, it's the Gridiron Podcast 3. Damn those other two at gmail.com. By the way, the damn those other two is not in the email address. It's just the Gridiron Podcast 3 at gmail.com.
Thank you.
Drop us an email. We love to hear from you guys. We've gotten emails from New Zealand before. Someone that binge listened to us on a cross-country road trip. It's great hearing from you guys. And if you want us to read out your email on air or on the podcast, just put it in there at the bottom. Hey, read it out for me. Okay, we can do that too. Guys, any final notes? No notes. Awesome. Love it. All right. For Nick Shook and Katie Caldwell, I'm Sean Barie. And as always, make sure you guys live life in the fast lane.
And try not to lose your voice spending a weekend with Sean Barie like I did.
Oh, my. Was it that obvious?
Good night, Canada.
That sounded great. Good night, Canada.
Good night, Ray Gun.